and trade departments are making the case for a shift to modified general community quarantine. They say it is not tantamount to easing health protocols, but it will open up more sectors of the economy. Postponing the 2022 elections would be unconstitutional, say lawmakers and an election lawyer, but a COMELEC commissioner says Congress and the President will have the final say. Two mining firms in Cebu have been suspended pending investigations into possible environmental damages due to dolomite mining. The Environment Department is looking into alleged damage to coral reefs. An airport in Helsinki vouches for the accuracy of its COVID sniffing dogs. A simple yelp from the sniffers supposedly means the virus has been detected. We begin tonight with the Food and Drug Administration looking at best-case scenarios for the availability of a COVID-19 vaccine, and they say that one optimistic progress just might see something viable out by April 2021. Greg Gregorio tells us more.
The Philippines is engaging with 17 bilateral partners for the development of a COVID-19 vaccine. 6 already inked a confidentiality data agreement or CDA as part of the ongoing negotiations for clinical trials for local manufacturing or procurement. Russia's Sputnik V is among the first to have a signed CDA for a phase 3 clinical trial and local manufacturing in the country. But a CDA, says Science and Technology Secretary Fortunato de la Peña, is only the first step. Vaccine makers have to secure recommendation from both DOST's Vaccine Experts Panel and a separate ethics review board. Only then they can apply for an approval from the Food and Drug Administration, which regulates the conduct of any clinical trial in the country.
Actually provided feedback to the Russian group regarding the results of their assessment, and they told me that they're still awaiting for the feedback from Russia, more in terms of additional data that they're asking.
Other partners are also at their early stage of negotiations for their vaccine candidates. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere admits the process takes time.
Bakit ba ang tagal? Matagal po kasi gusto nating siguraduhin na wala po mangyayaring hindi maganda sa ating mga kababayan kapag binigay na po natin sa kanila itong mga gamot o di kaya ay bakuna na ito.
In UST's forecast, the earliest a potential vaccine can complete its 3 to 6 month clinical trials is by the second quarter of 2021.
When they say 3 to 6 months, we prepare to use the longer forecast, okay, in our estimate. So that would indicate that in that period they will have finished the clinical trials and probably already submitted to FDA the results, their application and the results of their trial.
But FDA Director General Eric Domingo is setting his sights on vaccine approval by April 2021. That is if vaccine candidates with ongoing phase 3 clinical trials outside the Philippines will be completed by December or January, and if an application for a certificate of product registration be filed to the FDA immediately.
Talagang best case scenario yon, yung meaning yung 3 to 6 months, magiging 3 months, and assuming that they will complete all of their analysis and submit immediately to the FDA.
The DOST has allotted 89.1 million pesos for the country's participation in the WHO Solidarity Trials. Those will be conducted in 12 identified hospitals in Metro Manila, Calabarzon, Cebu, and Davao. Zoning guidelines have also been approved by the Interagency Task Force. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
While the world waits for a vaccine, Qatar is trying another COVID-19 testing method using saliva. In a laging handa briefing, Philippine Ambassador to Qatar Alan Timbayan said the method is being used on children and students. The saliva test is said to be less painful and non-invasive compared to swab testing. Timbayan also reported that 18 Filipinos in Qatar have died due to COVID-19.
Ang saliva-based COVID-19 testing po ay sinimulaan pa lamang ng September 20, 1920. Ang test po na ito ay para sa mga bata at estudyante lamang. Kukunin lang po ng example ng saliva ng bata at dadalahin po yung sa laboratorio para po suluin.
Joint Task Force COVID Shield Commander Guillermo Eliazar reminds the public to still wear face masks and observe physical distancing. This after a former Lipa Archbishop Ramon Arguelles invoked faith in God as defense against the health crisis. Eliazar said that while he understands Arguelles as a Roman Catholic, his action should still be based on the recommendations of health experts. In his September 23 homily, Arguelles, who told the faithful that there is no need to wear face masks as love for God, he said, and one another are enough to face the pandemic. No more home isolation, even for mild and asymptomatic cases, as the Interagency Task Force now requires facility isolation. But there are exemptions. Presidential spokesman Harry Roque said those considered vulnerable or suffering from other illnesses could still stay in their homes, granted that they satisfy the requirements. Home isolation will also be allowed if a region's ligtas COVID-19 centers are fully occupied and there are no other facilities available. And in order to stay afloat, some companies are shifting gears and are now producing personal protective equipment, or PPEs. But the Trade Department says more businesses might survive if the country shifts to MGCQ. Chino Francisco tells us why.
Before the COVID-19 pandemic, this company manufactured and exported garments to clients like Tory Burch. But now, part of its operations have been allotted for the production of medical-grade personal protective equipment like coverall. The Trade Department encourages local manufacturers to shift a portion of its operations to address the increasing demand for these products. Reliance Producers Cooperative said it was not a difficult decision to make as demand for their products was halved. Other companies followed suit like the EMS Component Assembly.
From just being an electronics company, the company repurposed its operations to produce face masks and save the jobs of its employees. Today, they are producing 20 million face masks per month.
According to the DTI, around 7,000 jobs were saved as manufacturers shifted into the PPE and face mask business.
Malaking tulong po sa pagbabalik trabaho namin at natigil kami ng 2 buwan.
At least 5 companies in the country have repurposed their operations to make medical-grade coveralls and face masks. With DTI's help, they were able to secure certifications and permits to fast-track production. But with demand for PPEs remaining high, the DTI noted that this is still not enough. The agency is pushing for a shift to modified general community quarantine in more parts of the country to help more employees return to work.
What I was emphasizing, when we say MGCQ, it is not a lowering down of minimum health standard, not at all. Ang difference ay more sectors to be open. Opening up the economy so that yung mga workers pa na hindi pa nakabalik sa trabaho will be able to get back to their jobs. Yun lang, trabaho lang, para naman meron silang kainin sa Christmas.
Several business groups are seeking exemptions from the mandatory wearing of face masks and face shields in the office, construction areas and factories as it affects productivity. But Lopez says removal of such protection is only allowed in certain situations.
Face mask lang will do, lalo na kung ikaw yung tumitingin ng mga instrumento, microscope, you need visual, unimpaired visual function, kailangan mo, pwedeng tanggalin yung face shield. Yun naman ang sinabi natin doon. Kung makaka-endanger sa'yo in fulfilling your function or makaka-apekto, pwedeng tanggalin yung face shield during that time. So, pero as yun na nga, pag umalis ka na sa your workplace, balik mo na lang yung face shield.
Shaila Francisco, VR1 News.
Labor Secretary Silvestre Abello supports the proposed easing of quarantine measures in Metro Manila by next month. In an interview with 1PH sa Totoo Lang, Abello said the Department of Labor and the Trade Department both back the implementation of MGCQ in NCR so as to further reopen the economy. He said Metro Manila is ready for a less strict quarantine level with more people already aware of health protocols.
Yung mga tao are more conscious about the health protocols. Hindi kagaya nung araw talagang pariwara ang mga tao. Ngayon, nakikita nila na kailangan talaga sumunod sa mga health protocols. So it might be safe.
We'll pause for a break, but when the big story returns, the palace has spoken. COVID-19 should never be used as precursor to postponing the elections. And 2 dolomite mining firms in Cebu were ordered suspended for alleged environmental damages. The details next. I'm Robbie Alampay, you're watching The Big Story. Malacanang says the pandemic must not be used to push for the postponement of the 2022 elections because it is a public service the government must deliver. Some senators also disapprove of the proposal, saying the move would be unconstitutional. Jenny Dongon with the story.
Senators thumbed down the proposal to postpone the 2022 elections due to the ongoing pandemic. Senator Panfilo Lacson says this is a clear violation of the Constitution, which explicitly states a fixed schedule of the polls and the terms allowed for national government officials. Senate President Tito Soto shares Lacson's opinion. In a statement, the Senate President also said ballot security issues may arise with the postponement of elections. Election experts do not see a postponement in the offing. Attorney Romulo Macalintal said the COVID-19 crisis is not a substantial reason to stop people from going out to vote. Macalintal said attention should instead be focused on taking necessary steps to ensure a safe 2022 elections. According to Section 5 of the Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines, polls are put to halt only during serious events like violence, terrorism, loss or destruction of election paraphernalia or records, or force majeure.
Yan ay dapat na mapatunayan sa isang petition sa COMELEC at tanging COMELEC lamang ang maaaring magdeklara ng suspension or postponement of election. Ang Pangulo ng ating bansa ay walang kapangyarihang mag-declare ng postponement. Ang Senado o anumang ahensya ng pamahalaan ay hindi pwedeng mag-declare ng postponement. Tanging ang COMELEC very premature, at hindi dapat na pinag-uusapan o magkakaroon tayo ng mga ganyang mga haka-haka na mapupuspon ng halala kasi baka mangamba ang taong bayan.
He added that elections may only be postponed at the local level.
Ang boto sa isang area, ang bilang ng boto doon ay hindi naman makaka-apekto sa lamang o kalamangan ng isang Pangulo, pangalawang Pangulo, ay hindi yan makakabalang sa proclamation ng isang presidente.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Commission on Elections, on the other hand, sees no need to postpone the election. According to COMELEC Chair Sheriff Abbas, it is their mandate to prepare and conduct the election based on the Constitution whether or not the pandemic is over. But this, he said, is still up to Congress and President Duterte.
This is a constitutional provision. I think wala sa call namin sa COMELEC yan. It's the call of both the Chamber of the House and the President. But rest assured, titingnan pa din namin yung kanyang mungkahin.
The COMELEC official added they're centering their preparations on the pandemic. The pool body is eyeing to extend the days of voting, bringing the filing of candidacy online, setting bigger voting venues, and requiring voters to wear face shields and face masks. They're also planning to purchase more vote counting machines, which require a larger budget for the commission. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, We Are One News.
Amnesty International wants stronger actions to end drug war killings and other human rights abuses in the Philippines. Calling on the United Nations Human Rights Council and the International Criminal Court to take concrete measures, Amnesty International said the Duterte administration has no intention of bringing justice to the families of the thousands of victims of the war on drugs. The rights group wants tougher independent investigative bodies to monitor the country. The social media center head of the Philippine Army will not face any sanctions. The armed forces maintains that the official did not commit any wrongdoing. Speaking on today's Laging Handa briefing, AFP spokesman Edgar Arevalo defended Captain Alexandre Cabales, who was tagged in pages taken down by Facebook for coordinated inauthentic behavior. The AFP is now in talks with Facebook to reveal the account supposedly connected to them. Arevalo also hinted at the possibility that Facebook is being used by enemies of the administration.
Baka sila nang po ay biktima ng CIB or coordinated inappropriate behavior naman, sapagkat ito pong mga kalaban ng ating pamahalaan ang nagtutulong-tulong upang gatungan at gamitin ang Facebook upang ma-take down itong napapakahalaga nating mga organisasyon.
The National Privacy Commission, meanwhile, will probe Facebook's proposed preventive actions regarding the proliferation of suspicious accounts. In a statement, NPC Commissioner Raymond Liboro says they are seeking more details on Facebook's findings. The NPC calls on the social media giant to comply with the country's laws and regulations in order to elevate community standards and ensure data privacy. In an interview with the chief cybercrime law expert, attorney J.J. Gicini explained that coordinated inauthentic behavior happens when a group of fake accounts try to pull other people into a conversation. Gicini added that Facebook focuses on the activities of the pages in question rather than the content.
Right. If I see something on Facebook that is anti-communist, I probably have a stronger tendency to share. So it's possible that that the AFP social media guy was unaware that this was a fake source. But because the views align with that of the armed forces, and of course they are staunchly anti-communist, it's likely that he shared, and perhaps the frequency of sharing across a barrier, right, across a threshold within Facebook use, na it might look to them like it's coordinated.
And these are the other big stories today. New outbreaks of the African swine fever were recorded in 6 more provinces. At the Laging Handa press briefing, Agriculture Secretary William Dar said new cases were reported in Albay, Quirino, Batangas, Quezon, Laguna, and Cavite. The Department of Agriculture is now partnering with the local government units to implement elevated quarantine measures. Environment Secretary Roy Cimatu has ordered the suspension of 2 dolomite firms in Alcoy, Cebu for alleged environmental damage. In a statement, the DNR identified the companies in question as Dolomite Mining Corporation, that's DMC, which does the quarrying operations, and the Philippine Mining Service Corporation, or PMSC, which operates the processing plant for dolomite. The probe will look into coral reef damage and the effects on water and air quality. And Business World is reporting that the BSP has set an annual interest rate ceiling of 24% for all credit card transactions starting October 3. This means credit card issuers can only charge interest rates of up to 2% per month on unpaid outstanding credit card balances. The limit for monthly add-on rates for credit card installment loans were meanwhile set at 1%. The Education Department may be seeking to increase their budget to more than 600 billion pesos next year, but as one lawmaker found out, that does not include even a single peso for special education. In the DepEd's defense, in this report by Mean Los Baños.
Education will never be the same, even if the country's schools transition back to face-to-face learning. This is according to Education Secretary Leonor Briones. Speaking before the Senate, Briones made the case for a 606 billion peso budget for DepEd, higher than the 521 billion peso funding this year. She says they're now looking into a post-COVID scenario.
The creation of a design unit right in the department, which will look into how possibly our school buildings, our classrooms, and our learning spaces will look like once we move on, as I said, we transition to the future.
As of September 25, 24.5 million students have enrolled for the upcoming school year, with public schools already reaching 99% of its target. Briones said about 48 million parents and family members will participate in the conduct of blended learning starting October 5. And while enrollees increase as the economy opens, private schools still fall short in enrollment. And with the elections nearing, Senator Sonny Angara asked Briones if DepEd has enough teachers, should the COMELEC extend the voting hours and do multiple voting shifts. While participation is voluntary, Briones said almost 100% of teachers help out during election day.
All 900,000 actually served. Kasi one day ho yun. Ang sabi ng COMELEC, kapag may second day of voting, you'll need a new set of teachers. So I was wondering, do we have enough numerically?
The law also provides that if the number of teachers will not be sufficient, then other sectors of society can also be recruited or brought in. But the usual preference, of course, is for teachers because they have this much experience in doing this and they know what are the risks.
Meanwhile, Senator Win Gatchalian questioned the zero budget for special education program or SPED next year. The DepEd said it will tap its Learning Resources Fund but admitted that SPED will compete with other needs of majority of students like self-learning materials.
We all know that learners with disabilities really demand extra attention because of their situation. For humanitarian purpose and to support our learners with disabilities, to reinstate the budget.
The budget for vouchers for senior high school is also slashed from 18 billion pesos this year to 13 billion pesos for 2021. But DepEd said the DBM included a 10 billion peso standby fund so the agency can continue to pay for the tuition of the students. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
Time for another short break. When the big story returns, airlines are gearing up for a possible influx of passengers once Boracay reopens. Their safety protocols next. And yes, dogs are cute whenever they yelp or lie down, but what if it means you have the COVID-19? A look at Finland's COVID-sniffing dogs after the break. Welcome back to the big story. I'm Robbie Alampay. The Integrated Bar of the Philippines is calling it unfortunate and tragic, the Ombudsman's move to restrict public access to the statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth, or SALEDs, of government officials. In an interview with Cito Beltran on Agenda, IBP President Attorney Domingo Cayosa hit the suspension of lifestyle checks and Ombudsman Samuel Martir's proposal to abolish his own office. Cayosa finds it ironic that the country's supposed anti-graft master is the one taking away transparency mechanisms.
The law is there, and more importantly, the Constitution is there. The letter and spirit of the Constitution regarding SALN And the Office of the Ombudsman is very clear. So instead of doing this, perhaps they could consider just doing better, not abolishing these transparency mechanisms.
As Boracay beefs up its safety protocols for its scheduled reopening to tourists next month, airlines are also gearing up for the possible influx of passengers to the island. Their preparations in Gerard de la Peña's report.
Airports may soon see more passengers as the popular beach destination Boracay reopens to tourists come October. Budget carrier AirAsia assured the public that strict health protocols are in place.
Importante na yung safety pa rin ay in place. So we are still waiting dun sa final guidelines na ilalabas ng local government unit para nang sa ganun mas mag-boost pa namin yung aming campaign dun sa pagsuporta namin sa reopening ng Boracay.
Flag carrier Philippine Airlines said it is ready to mount flights to Kalibo and Katiklan as soon as the government allows leisure trips. For its part, Cebu Pacific hopes more Filipinos will start traveling again. The airlines acknowledged that reopening the flights to Kalibo and Katiklan would help them bounce back from their losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Each major local airline ruled out 2 to 7 flights per day to and from these popular tourist destinations before the pandemic. Meanwhile, they are appealing to the public for understanding as they scramble to refund passengers whose flights have been cancelled since March. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, VR1 News.
And here are some of the big stories across the globe. North Korean President Kim Jong-un has apologized after North Korean troops shot dead a South Korean government worker who had crossed a maritime border. He acknowledged that relations in the peninsula might be affected because of the incident. Kim Jong-un said Pyongyang has strengthened its maritime surveillance to avoid similar incidents. China's permanent representative to the United Nations, Zhang Jun, lashed out at the U.S. after it accused Beijing of mishandling the COVID-19 pandemic. At a summit-level debate on Thursday, U.S. Permanent Representative to the UN, Kelly Craft, demanded to hold China accountable for the spread of the virus. But Zhang said the U.S. is at fault for the worsening crisis. And as the U.S. elections draw near, U.S. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and other top Republicans have distanced themselves from President Donald Trump's refusal to commit to a peaceful transfer of power. In a tweet, McConnell said they will accept the results of the November polls and that there will be an orderly transition for elected officials, just as there has been every 4 years since 1792. And of course, they say dogs are man's best friend, and that can be cliche for some, but not when this canine friend of yours can save your life by knowing if you have COVID-19. In Finland's Helsinki Vantaa Airport, 15 dogs and 10 instructors have joined health authorities to monitor passengers. These dogs are trained to supposedly detect COVID-19 by sniffing on gauzes that passengers wipe on their necks and place in a can. The private veterinary clinic behind the team says their dogs can detect the disease 5 days before a patient exhibits symptoms. But the dog's efficiency has yet to be proven in comparative scientific studies. Those who were identified by the dogs as infected were assisted to undergo confirmatory swab tests. But preliminary tests show the sniffers can detect the virus at nearly 100% accuracy. That's their claim, at least. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again on Monday, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News. Good evening.